my wife said. She wanted to try something new with another man, just for the weekend. She's certain I would accept her infidelity. But I smiled and replied, "Great, because while you are gone, I will finally do what I always dreamed of." My name's Javier, 35 years old, and I believe my marriage to Sofia was unbreakable. Until one night, with a drink in her hand, she confessed that she wanted to experience something new with another man. "Just one weekend," she said. But that betrayal unleashed a storm that neither of us expected. This is what I did when my wife thought she could play with me and come back as if nothing had happened. It was Friday night in Madrid and I, Javier, was arriving exhausted after an endless day at the office. I was dreaming of a quiet weekend with Sofia, my wife of 6 years. But upon entering the house, her cold gaze stopped me in my tracks. She was sitting with a glass of red wine in her hand, as if she were about to close a deal. "Javier, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice firm, without hesitation. I sat down expecting anything but what came next. "I want to spend the weekend with another man." Just that, a weekend to feel something different. The air became heavy. I thought it was a joke, but her expression did not change. "What?" My voice came out like a broken whisper. She took a sip of her wine, as if she were discussing the dinner menu. "I do not want to regret not having lived. It is just an experience, Javier. It does not change what we have." My chest was burning. How could she say that? 6 years of promises, laughter, plans, and now she asked, leaning towards me, her tone almost defiant. I could not process it. Sofia, the woman with whom I had planned a future, was asking me for a free pass as if our marriage were a formality. There was no guilt in her eyes, only a calmness that chilled my blood. "I will be back on Sunday. Everything will be as before," she added, getting up to pack her suitcase. I did not respond. My mind was a whirlwind. When the door closed behind her, something in me broke. I was not going to be the husband who waits, broken and humiliated. If she wanted something new, I could also play that game, but not as she expected. That night I did not sleep. Her voice echoed in my head. Just one weekend. But it was not just time, it was betrayal. At dawn, I made a decision. I was not going to stand by idly. I called a locksmith and a moving company. By the time Sofia returned, she would not recognize her life. At noon, the locksmith changed all the locks, front door, back door, garage. The access codes erased. Then the movers arrived. Everything of hers out. I do not care where, but get it out, I ordered. Clothes, books, memories. Everything was packed and sent to a storage unit. The house was left empty, like my trust in her. But it was not enough. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions. On a dating app, one met Lucia. I was not looking for love, just a change. Her message was direct. "Coffee tonight." I accepted. Hours later, she was at my door with a smile that promised trouble. "Nice house," she said, entering with confidence. I offered her a drink. "Why are you free, Javier?" she asked directly. "My wife wanted a different weekend." "Me too," I replied. She laughed without judging me. "A man who takes control. I like that." The house was no longer a home. It was my declaration of independence. Sofia thought she could come back as if nothing had happened. She was mistaken. On Sunday at 6 p.m., my phone vibrated. "Sofia." I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Finally, I answered. "Are you back already?" I said, my voice cold. "Javier, the key does not work." "What is going on?" Her tone was one of surprise, not regret. "How strange. Maybe because it is not your house anymore." Silence. Then a tremor in her voice. "What do you mean? You made your decision, Sofia?" "I made mine." A knock on the door. I opened it. There she was with her suitcase, pale. Her eyes met Lucia's, who was on the stairs, relaxed, as if she had always belonged there. "Who is she?" Sofia stammered. "Something new," I replied with a sharp smile. The shock on her face was just the beginning. The door closed behind Sofia, who stood motionless with her suitcase, processing what had just happened. I, Javier, stood firm, feeling the weight of my decision. She expected me to give in, to open the door for her again, but I did not. Lucia, from the stairs, watched with a calmness that contrasted with the tension in the air. Sofia turned around, dragging her suitcase, but her silence was not surrender. It was a strategic retreat, and I knew it. That night, Lucia stayed at my house. I was not looking to fill a void or replace Sofia. She simply made me feel alive. We laughed, we talked, and for the first time in years, I was not burdened by someone else's expectations. The house, now empty of Sophia's memories, began to feel like my own space, a place where I could decide who I was without her shadow. The next morning, my phone vibrated nonstop. Messages from Sophia flooded the screen, each one more desperate than the last. She asked to talk, insisted it was a mistake, that we could fix it. I did not respond. Every word of hers was an attempt to regain the control she had lost. It was not the repentant Sophia. It was the Sophia who did not accept losing. The doorbell rang at noon, insistent, almost frantic. I looked through the peephole. Sophia was there with dark circles under her eyes and a determination that bordered on obsession. I opened the door just enough to face her, maintaining my position in the doorway. She tried to enter, but my body blocked the way. Her voice trembled as she asked me to give her back her life, to recognize that one weekend could not destroy 6 years of marriage. But it was not just one weekend. It was the betrayal, the lack of respect, the ease with which she had discarded me. I told her there was nothing to fix, that she had made her choice when she got into that car, when she asked me to accept her adventure as if it were a formality. Her eyes filled with tears, but they did not move me. For years, I had been the perfect husband, always giving in, always waiting. That Javier no longer existed. I closed the door, leaving her pleas on the other side. I knew she would not give up so easily. Sophia was not one to accept defeat without a fight. That afternoon, while I was having coffee with Lucia, my phone vibrated again. This time it was not Sophia, but an unknown number. A short and direct message. I know what Sophia did. Meet me tonight at the Bar La Luna. You deserve to know the truth. I showed the message to Lucia, who raised an intrigued eyebrow. I did not know what to expect, but something inside me told me I had to go. Curiosity, mixed with a spark of anger, pushed me to act. I arrived at the Bar La Luna, a small and crowded place in the heart of Madrid. Music was playing in the background, but my attention was on the door. A man approached, tall, with a serious look that left no room for games. He introduced himself as Carlos, the man with whom Sophia was planning to spend the weekend. My body tensed, but I contained my fury. I wanted answers. Carlos did not waste time. He told me that Sophia had not been honest. It was not a spontaneous weekend adventure. They had been talking for months, planning, building something behind my back. Every word of his was like a blow. It was not just a momentary betrayal. It was a sustained lie, a parallel life that Sophia had woven without me suspecting anything. Carlos said he did not want to be part of her games, that I deserved to know who I was married to. I left the bar with my head on fire. The fury was growing, but also a cold clarity. Sophia had not only betrayed me, but she had planned it with a precision that made me question every moment of our marriage. How many times had she looked me in the eyes while talking to him? How many nights had she shared with me while dreaming of another life? The truth was a poison that burned, but it also set me free. I returned home, where Lucia was waiting for me. I told her everything, and she listened in silence, without interrupting. When I finished, she only said one thing. Now you know who she is. What are you going to do? I did not respond immediately, but inside me, the answer was already clear. There was no going back. Sophia had crossed a line that could not be undone, and I was not going to continue being the man who waits to be chosen. The revelation from Carlos at the Bar La Luna left me in a state of contained fury. It was not just that Sophia had planned to spend a weekend with another man. It was that she had been weaving a web of deceit behind my back for months. Every message, every call, every secret meeting with him was a stab to the 6 years I thought we had built together. I returned home with my heart racing, but with absolute certainty. I was not going to let Sophia manipulate me again. Lucia was still there, waiting for me. She did not ask questions. She just watched me as I processed the truth. Her presence was a reminder that I could choose something different, something that was not stained by betrayal. But it was not just about her. It was about me, about regaining control of my life. That night, I made a decision. I was not only going to close the door on Sophia, but I was going to make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. The next morning, my phone vibrated again. More messages from Sophia, now with a softer, almost broken tone. She said she had not gone through with it with Carlos, that she had come back because she loved me, that we could save our marriage. Every word sounded like a desperate attempt to rewrite history, but I no longer cared. I did not respond. Instead, I contacted a lawyer. I wanted everything to be legal, clean, definitive. If Sophia wanted to play with our life, she would face the consequences on a field she could not manipulate. The lawyer was direct. With the proof of her messages and Carlos's confession, I had a solid case for a quick divorce. I did not want to prolong the process or fall into an emotional war. As I signed the first documents, I felt a mixture of relief and emptiness. It was not just the end of a marriage, it was the end of a version of myself that had lived to please her. That afternoon, Sophia appeared at the door again. I was not surprised. Her insistence was predictable, but this time she did not come alone. There was a man with her, not Carlos, but someone who looked like a friend or perhaps an attempt to intimidate me. I did not flinch. I opened the door and stood in the doorway without letting them pass. Sophia spoke first, with a mixture of pleading and defiance, saying that she needed to come in, that she could not believe I had gone this far. The man behind her remained silent, but his presence was clearly an attempt at pressure. I did not give in. I told her that the house was no longer hers, that her things were in a storage unit, and that she would soon receive the divorce papers. Her face turned pale. For the first time, I saw a flash of genuine panic in her eyes. She tried to negotiate, saying that nothing physical had happened with Carlos, that it had only been a fantasy, a momentary mistake. But her words had no weight. The betrayal was not just physical, it was the intention, the planning, the contempt for what I meant. The man accompanying her finally spoke, suggesting that I should calm down and give Sophia a chance. I ignored him. My gaze was fixed on her. I told her there was no going back, that she had chosen to break our pact, and that now she had to live with it. Sophia tried to approach, but I raised a hand, stopping her. I did not want any more empty promises. I closed the door, this time with a calmness I had not felt before. That night, while Lucia and I shared a simple dinner, my phone vibrated again. It was an email from Sophia, not a message. In it, she admitted that she had made a mistake, but also tried to justify her actions, saying that she felt trapped in our routine, that she needed to live. She ended by asking me for one last meeting, just us, to talk face to face. I did not respond, but I saved the email. I knew I might need it later as proof of her own admission. The following week was a whirlwind. The divorce papers were moving forward, and I was starting to rebuild my life. Lucia was not a serious relationship, but her company reminded me that I could choose for myself, not out of obligation. I went to new places, tried things I had never considered before. A photography course, a weekend getaway to Valencia, dinners with friends I had neglected to prioritize Sophia. Every step took me further away from the life I had known with her. But Sophia did not give up. One morning I received a call from an unknown number. It was her, from another phone. Her voice was broken, almost unrecognizable. She said she had lost everything. Her home, her stability, me. She tried to appeal to my compassion, but I had nothing left to offer her. I told her it was not my responsibility to save her from her decisions. I hung up, blocked the number, and moved on. The weight of her betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined me. For the first time, I felt that my life belonged to me, and although I knew Sophia would try to come back, I was ready to face her, not with anger, but with the certainty that I was worth more than her lies. The certainty of my decision settled like an anchor after closing the door on Sophia. It was not just the end of a marriage, but the beginning of a life where I decided my own path. The following days were a mix of relief and challenge. Every step I took, from signing the divorce papers to exploring new hobbies, distanced me from Sophia's shadow. But she was not going to disappear so easily, and I knew it. One morning, while checking my email, I found a notification from the lawyer. The divorce documents were ready to be filed, but he needed additional evidence to expedite the process. I remembered Sophia's email, where she admitted her mistake, and I forwarded it to the lawyer. Every move I made was calculated, not for revenge, but for justice. I wanted everything to be legal, with no loose ends she could use to come back. That same afternoon, while walking through El Retiro Park, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. It was Sophia again, using a new number. She said she needed to see me urgently, that there was something important she could not say over the phone. I hesitated. A part of me wanted to ignore her, but curiosity, or perhaps the need to close this chapter, pushed me to accept. We agreed to meet at a cafe in Chueca, a neutral place where there would be no room for her manipulations. I arrived first and sat at a secluded table. When Sophia entered, she looked exhausted, as if the last few weeks had worn her down. She did not try to hug me or force a closeness that no longer existed. She sat in front of me, her hands trembling slightly. She said that she had reflected and that she understood the damage she had caused. She admitted that her relationship with Carlos was not just a fleeting idea, but something she had nurtured for months because she felt trapped in our life. But, according to her, she never wanted to lose me. I did not interrupt her. I let her speak, letting her words fill the silence. When she finished, she looked at me with a spark of hope, as if she expected her confession to soften me. But it did not. I told her that her regret came too late, that the damage was not in what she had done or not done with Carlos, but in the ease with which she discarded me. There was no place for her in my life. Now, I stood up, left a few coins for the coffee, and walked out without looking back. That night, Lucia accompanied me to a photography exhibition in Malesana. It was not a serious relationship, but her presence reminded me that I could enjoy life without carrying the weight of someone else's expectations. As we walked through the streets of Madrid, laughing and discussing the photos we had seen, I felt a freedom I had not experienced in years. I was not looking to replace Sophia. I was building something new, something of my own. Days later, I received a call from the lawyer. Sophia had tried to contact him, offering a deal to avoid the divorce. She wanted to negotiate, proposing couples therapy or a temporary separation. I rejected everything. I did not want to fix what she had broken. The lawyer assured me that the process would move forward and that with the evidence, including her own email, the case was solid. I felt a deep relief, not out of hatred, but because every step brought me closer to total freedom. Sophia did not appear in person again, but her messages continued, becoming more and more sporadic. In one, she accused me of being cruel for not giving her a second chance. In another, she said she was seeking professional help to understand her mistakes. I did not respond, not because I hated her, but because it was no longer my responsibility to bear her decisions. I blocked every number she used, cutting off any path she could use to reach me. One afternoon, while organizing my schedule for a trip to Granada, I received an unexpected message from a mutual friend. He told me that Sophia had moved to another city, probably Barcelona, and that she was trying to start over. I did not feel satisfaction or sadness, only indifference. Her life was no longer my problem. She had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. My routine began to take shape. I enrolled in a writing workshop, something I always wanted to do but had postponed to prioritize Sophia. I met new people, explored bars and restaurants I had never visited, and slowly, Madrid began to feel like a blank canvas. Lucia remained a part of my life, not as a permanent partner, but as someone who reminded me that I could choose for myself. Every day was an opportunity to rediscover who I was without the weight of a broken marriage. Sophia's betrayal still hurt, but it no longer defined me. I had transformed that pain into action, into a life worth living. And although I knew she might try to return someday, I was prepared, not with anger, but with the certainty that my future belonged to me. The months following the meeting at the cafe marked the true beginning of my new life. Sophia's shadow was fading, not because the pain had completely disappeared, but because I had chosen not to let it define me. Every day, upon waking up in my apartment in Madrid, I felt a relief that previously seemed unattainable. Sophia's betrayal, her months of deceit, her attempt to manipulate me with empty promises, all of that was now a distant echo, like a storm that had already passed. The divorce process moved forward without any hitches. The lawyer informed me that Sophia had stopped trying to negotiate. She signed the papers without further resistance, perhaps because she finally understood that there was no going back. I received the official confirmation one sunny morning while having a coffee in the Plaza Mayor. I read the document, put it away, and went on with my day. There was no celebration or sadness, just the certainty that I had closed a chapter forever. Lucia continued to be an intermittent presence in my life. We were not looking for commitment, but her company was a constant reminder that I could enjoy moments without strings attached, without the weight of others' expectations. Together we explored new corners of Madrid, from local markets to small jazz bars and lavapies. But beyond her, I began to reconnect with myself. I joined a hiking club and spent weekends walking in the Sierra de Guadarrama, feeling the freedom of being alone with my thoughts. One day, while checking my email, I found an unexpected message from Sofia. It was not a plea or an attempt to come back. It was brief, almost formal. It said that she had moved to Valencia and that she was working on herself, attending therapy to understand why she had sabotaged our marriage. It ended with an apology, not expecting my forgiveness, but because she recognized the damage caused. I did not respond, not because I held a grudge, but because her apology no longer had a place in my life. I deleted it and moved on. My routine was filled with small victories. A local magazine published a short story I wrote in the writing workshop, something I never imagined achieving when I was trapped in the dynamic with Sofia. I reconnected with old friends, planned a trip to Brazil, and even started teaching photography to children at a community center. Every step I took was an affirmation of my independence, of a life I was building for myself, not to please someone else. One afternoon, while walking through the Retiro Park, I received a call from a mutual friend. He told me that Sofia was rebuilding her life, but that she still talked about me, wondering if she had made the biggest mistake by letting me go. I did not feel satisfaction or pity, only indifference. Her life was no longer my responsibility. She had faced the consequences of her decisions, and I had found my own path. Sofia's betrayal had broken me, but it had also liberated me. It taught me that my worth did not depend on her approval, that I could build a life that belonged to me. As the sun set over Madrid, I knew that I had not only survived her betrayal, but I had won, not out of revenge, but for having chosen to live for myself. My future was a blank canvas, and for the first time, I was holding the brush.